Interdependence in oligopolistic markets. Game theory can be used to understand the results of interdependence. In oligopolistic markets, each firm is affected by the behaviour of the others. The firms are interdependent. This means that the behaviour of firms in oligopolistic markets can be looked at as a kind of mathematical game. Game theory is a branch of maths. It's all to do with analysing situations where two or more players, e.g. people, firms, etc., are each trying to work out what to do to further their own interests. The fate of each of the players depends on their own decisions and the decisions of everyone else, so all the players are interdependent. This is why it is used to analyse situations in economics. The kinked demand curve model is used to explain price stability. So the kinked demand curve looks like this. So I would sketch this down before we go any further. You can understand some outcomes from certain oligopolistics by playing the game theory, or playing the game from each firm's perspective. For example, the model of the kinked demand curve illustrates why prices are often quite stable, even in some competitive oligopolies. In the kinked demand curve model, there are two assumptions. One, if one firm raises its prices, then the other firm will not raise their prices. Second, if one firm lowers its prices, then the other firm will also lower theirs. The first assumption means that if a firm which raises its prices will see quite a large drop in demand. This is because consumers are likely to switch to buying their goods from other firms. In other words, when prices increase, demand is elastic. So therefore it makes sense for the competing firms not to increase their price. The second assumption means that a firm which lowers its prices will not gain any market share overall, although we can say that the overall size of the market may increase slightly, given that all the firms will have lowered their prices. In other words, when prices decreased, demand is price inelastic. Any competing firm not reducing its prices will lose revenue since customers will buy elsewhere. This means that any firm that reduces prices will lose out. They won't gain market share, but the average price for their products will have fallen. The result of the above assumptions is a kinked demand curve, as you've already drawn. The outcome is that the firms have no incentive to change prices. If they either raise or lower prices, they will lose out as a result. The result is price stability for prolonged periods of time. Note that the firms are competing here, not colluding. Each firm would reduce its prices if that would help increase revenue, but it doesn't. The kinked demand curve describes just one possible outcome. The kinked demand curve model shows one type of interdependence. This means that it doesn't explain the behaviour of firms in every oligopoly. The assumptions in the kinked demand curve model may not be appropriate for every oligopoly, and if they're not, the model won't predict firms' behaviour at all well. Other oligopolistic markets will be better described using different models. The prisoner dilemma model can show first mover advantage. The prisoner dilemma model can be used to understand how interdependent firms might act in an oligopolistic market. In the version below, there are actually two firms instead of two prisoners. Suppose there are just two firms in a market, firm A and firm B. Each firm has to decide what level of output to produce in their oligopolistic market situation. For simplicity, assume that each firm has two options. Produce a high level of output, produce a low level of output. Both firms know the other firm is also trying to decide what level of output to produce. and both firms know that they're interdependent. That is, both firms will be affected by each other's decisions. The result of the firm's different choices can be summarized using a payoff matrix. The coloured figures show the profit that each firm will make for a different combination of choices. For example, if firm A outputs at a high level and firm B outputs at a low level, then firm A will make a profit of 300 while firm B will make a profit of 100. If the firms cooperate and agree to restrict output to low levels, then the outcome for both firms will be a profit of 200. This is better than if they both output at a high level, as there will be a loss of 100. This could work well for both firms if they can both be trusted. It should be pointed out that if they both output at a high level, they'll flood the market and drive down the price until it's below the cost of production. However, as we've said, it's in the interest of each firm to stop cooperating and raise output as long as they do this before the other firm decides to. This is because if one firm decides to cheat and increase output to get a profit of 300, then it's actually in the interest of the other firms to keep producing at a low level and make the reduced profit of 100, instead of raising output and forcing both companies to make a loss of 100. This is an illustration of first move advantage. However, it should be pointed out that neither firm can be certain if, or even when, the other will decide to raise output. The theory of first mover advantage shows why cartels can be unstable. Every firm knows that they can get an advantage if they break the agreement before everyone else does. Being the first mover isn't always an advantage. Being the first mover can give a firm an advantage, but it can also be a disadvantage. Different decisions will make sense in different situations. It all depends on the numbers in the payoff matrix. That is, the potential profits and losses that each firm could make in the various possible scenarios. For example, suppose several firms are all deciding whether to launch a new type of product onto the market. The first mover could make a huge profit by winning a large market share very early. However, if they've overestimated the demand for the product, they may make huge losses. Also, competitors may be able to use a lot of the technology that the first firm has developed, reducing their costs and allowing them to charge a lower price than the first mover. I've given an example here as well of some of the other problems of disadvantages on the screen. The one that's of particular interest as of 2019 is about the first mover concept of releasing untested products to the market. And we can think about the Samsung flip phone, which has not been a big success because the screen has bubbled up and hasn't been particularly well received by consumers. And that's simply because Samsung wanted to release their product before Apple and other phone companies, and therefore they released a phone of poor quality, and it was because it was untested.